any question. So once you are all called on, please unmute yourself. Remember to mute yourself again after your question has been answered. We are currently live streaming this webinar on YouTube, and it will be available on YouTube after the event. If you do not wish to be seen, please be sure your camera is turned off. Leaving your camera on indicate your agreement to the streamed in public. Webinars are offered on the third Thursday of each month, 10 a.m. New York time. Your log time may change as New York time changes to and from daylight savings. East Africa time is 8 hours ahead of the eastern part. So today, it is my honor to introduce to you Dr. Paul Young, a highly accomplished clinical professor of anatomy, neurobiology, and neurosurgery at St. Louis University. A proud native of St. Louis, Dr. Young earned his undergraduate and medical degree from St. Louis University, followed by internship at UCLA, Harbor General Hospital in Los Angeles, and a neurosurgery resident at St. Louis University. He further honed his expertise in microsurgery during a fellowship under the legendary Professor M. Gazi Yasagiri at the University of Zurich, Switzerland. Dr. Young's outstanding contributions have earned him numerous awards, including being listed among the best doctors in America and receiving the Science Educator of the Year award from the Academy of Science of St. Louis. Beyond his academic achievement, Dr. Young has dedicated himself to advancing neurosurgery globally. He is the founder of East Africa Neurosurgery Mission, supporting institutions across Kenya, Tanzania, and Zanzibar. He also established the neurosurgery training program of East, Central, and South Africa, currently COSEXA program, the first regional multinational training initiative addressing the critical need for neurosurgical care in this region. Dr. Young's visionary leadership has also played a pivotal role in constructing the first neurosurgery hospital in Zanzibar in collaboration with Neurosurgery Education and Development, NED Foundation. We are privileged to have Dr. Young with us today, sharing his remarkable expertise and experiences that continue to shape the future of global neurosurgery. Dr. Young, please welcome.
Thank you, Romani. Good morning, everyone. Although I know many of you, it's good afternoon or even early good evening. Although I'm experiencing some of that myself, just having gotten back from Zanzibar a few days ago. Not sure what time it is here either. Again, Romani, thank you for the invitation. Much appreciated. And all you're doing to make these sorts of interactions possible. And of course, Roger, for your leadership. My friend Magalie, I know I owe you a dinner. And my new friend Marta, nice to see all of you. Well, my intent here in the next few minutes is to describe my experiences. And why won't my slide advance? Let's see here. Okay. Is to describe my experiences in the last 25 years in working in neurosurgery in East Africa. That's led to the development of both the training program and the establishment of the neurosurgery hospital in Zanzibar, a very unique institution in the world. So going through what's happened, obviously the decision that I made 25 years ago to go to East Africa was an easy one based on the need. This was the department at Kenyatta Hospital, one ward in the entire country. We all know the statistics, and the need was clear. So deciding where to go for me was not in any way difficult. The other part of the next few minutes that I'd like to talk about that sometimes we kind of overlook are the motivational and I guess emotional aspects of what we do as volunteers. How do we describe the things that we're doing? And why is this important? Well, I think, many of us now volunteer because sometimes we're not getting as much satisfaction out of working in a more developed area. We don't sometimes feel needed, or we would like to serve with no expectation of anything in return. And the feelings, what are the feelings that volunteers have during their experiences? I have taken many hundreds of people with me on various trips over the years, and watching them as they experience this incredible opportunity. Some seem overwhelmed, perhaps even sad. Others are fulfilled and inspired. And I think understanding the emotions that we all experience is a very important part of the connection. And I think, in our world today, being able to understand the difference between empathy and compassion is important. Empathy, if you think about it as purely a connection to someone in need, tends to be one of the things that activates the amygdala and the fear cycle. And if one is empathetic, especially in the social world that we live in, and all the bad things that are happening, it can easily lead, if this is an ongoing issue, a repeated exposure or something severe, to a sense of burnout and even other symptoms. Or one can simply block it out. And I think in our social world, this is not uncommon. Many bad things happening in many places that we seem to be less empathetic about, right? We're sort of blocking it out because internally we don't want to get ourselves depressed or anxious about what's happening. Well, I think compassion is the response to empathy, right? It's our doing something about it. It's putting ourselves in a position to respond to that. And what compassion does is that it activates the accumbens and the reward cycle, so that one then, by being compassionate, actually develops a different sort of internal feeling where you're rewarded by doing something to solve it. And I think this is something I'm doing a lot of talks now that I've retired from the clinical practice of neurosurgery to our adolescents. And, I think in the adolescent world, this is an important issue, with social media being such a prominent part of their lives, that understanding, perhaps it's time to take a hold of this. And, one of the starting points I tell the adolescents is every day, just simply do a random act of kindness. Do something kind for somebody else and capture the feeling of either being on the recipient or the giving end of that moment. And now you're becoming compassionate, and develop that in your life. And I think these are messages for all of us, and all of us that are involved in these efforts already to some degree recognize this, but I think better understanding also many times can be helpful. The other part of this is even getting a little bit deeper into, okay, so I am a compassionate person. I'm involved in philanthropy. And I understand that this is part of the reward cycle, but what it really, as you look deeper, is happening. And, as people who love how the brain works, certainly both empathy and compassion are part of the social brain network. And we recognize some of the components of that here in the area of the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, the anterior part of the cingulate, precuneus, the parietal temporal junction, and then, of course, the area of the accumbens is all part of this compassion network. Now, what if one looks at this as a reward sort of thing? What are the rewards? Well, there are two types of rewards, right? From being involved in philanthropic activities. One is an intrinsic award, where it's, doing something pretty much out of the goodness of your heart. It's that warm glow. You know, it's the relief of what we just talked about, the anxiety that pure empathy can create. Perhaps something that you were taught as a child or something in your religion, the things that really we consider to be doing something just because it's a good thing to do without any extrinsic satisfaction, as opposed to what we would classify as strategic, where you're doing something great, but there's some expectation that perhaps you're going to get something out of it. You know, is there reciprocity? Am I feeling intellectually dominant by doing this? Is it boosting my social standing or enhancing my professional status? So there can be a number of other things. And if you look at functional MRI imaging of individuals, and this is a very fun study that I really enjoyed reading, where they looked at all of the previous functional imaging studies of this and cumulatively looked at, okay, where in the brain, if you're doing something out of a purely altruistic motive, these in the ventral medial areas are lighting up strongly, as opposed to if it's a strategic goal, then it's a little different area, somewhat a ventral prefrontal, but also involved in more the anterior cingulate region, which is, of course, we know involved in critical decision making. So why is this in any way important? Well, from my vantage point, I always like to know in my own heart what is motivating me to do things. And for me, it's an internal journey. But also, as we connect the dots in our volunteer efforts, as we connect multiple other individuals and institutions, if we're going to be successful in that, it's important to know what is their motivation in being part of this philanthropy. So I think it's helpful in many ways to better understand sometimes the motivational parts and the emotional parts of what we do, if we're going to be successful in basically connecting all the dots. So I started in 99. I went for a month. I went with my daughter. We had no prior contacts. Moody Qureshi met me at the airport, and we went on from there. It was the most incredible experience probably of my life. The surgeries, the other activities, certainly the teaching part for me was particularly special. And, you know, being someone who kind of adhered to the Jesuit philosophy of a man for others, and I went to the same high school and med school as Tom Dooley. I had this spirit in my heart that sort of drove me to make this first trip. I had a number of impressions working at Kenyatta, you know, a huge 2,000 plus bed open air hospital, the main referral area, not probably for Kenya, but for many areas surrounding. And as we all know, back then, lots of shortages, lots of patients that didn't even have a bed who were sleeping on the floor. But, you know, I was so impressed, I think, by the determination of the providers, the determination of those in need, the willingness to learn, to accept new things, the gratitude. I left with just an incredible appreciation of the medical climate, despite so many things not being there, so many necessary things. The climate to me was just overwhelmingly inspiring. I learned to do a lot with a lot less. And when I arrived, I brought a microscope and a ski bag and 7 boxes. So basically, I brought everything. We had bipolars, we had drill systems, suction systems, everything one could think to do surgery. And I remember one particular event where we were doing, and here you see the setup for a craniopharyngioma in the United States and Europe and many developed countries. We can attest that the room would look a fair bit different than this for surgery like that. I remember one episode where the electrical system wasn't working properly, and I could only use 2 out of 3 electrical instruments at one time. So it was the microscope or the bipolar or the suction apparatus. And it was interesting trying to do a fairly difficult tumor, but throughout the surgery. But again, learning to do a lot with a lot less. Critical care, obviously, one of the things that you don't sometimes working in a developed area recognize as its importance, and it's many other associated disciplines, right? It's critical care, it's anesthesia, radiology, pathology, oncology. I mean, we could go on, and recognizing how important they are, not just in being able to accomplish something as a volunteer, but also how the umbrella of development, we'll talk about this in a minute too, as neurosurgery develops, all of these associated disciplines seem to develop based on that discipline developing. I had a grandfather who I used to travel with, and when he was a family doc, and his job was talking to people. I mean, he was an incredible guy. He didn't even have any employees. He just had an office, and people would come, and he'd spend 20, 30, 45 minutes talking to them. And, I think in developed countries, sometimes we've lost that. And, the direct patient care now is sort of mixed into being able to write it into the computer. And how many face-to-face interactions do we have that are limited by that? And the beauty that I found was that didn't exist. And here we see medical records at the Kenyatta Hospital that would be a testament to that. One of the other things I learned was humility. I often say on my visits and my interactions, I learn more than I teach. And the capability of seeing things that often in developed countries we would never or hardly ever see, certainly enhanced me as a surgeon and as a teacher. So humility in terms of our volunteer efforts is certainly a big part. And connecting, in this world, we are connected to each other in ways that we have yet begun to understand. And I think looking people in the eye and connecting. There was one episode where we were leaving, and one of the people that was waiting for an appointment, one of the moms with a child, just grabbed my coat and just didn't want me to leave. Wanted me to stay and to help her. And those types of interactions you can't look away from. Because I think looking someone in the eye and doing everything you can is the underlying emotional component of hope, right? You never look away. And I think that's taught me, a lot in my life about interactions in every day. We all pass homeless people on the street. And I may not have a buck in my wallet to give them. I'm in a hurry to get to an operation or a hurry to do this, but I can at least look them in the eye. I can at least say something quietly to them and make a connection that I think provides them hope and something that is important to all of us. When I was leaving this month, I was given this hand-carved statue by the nurses at a small go-away party. And you notice this side is perfectly carved and beautiful, and you notice the opposite side is uncarved. And they obviously knew that I was perplexed by this gift. It was beautiful, but I wasn't sure why it wasn't finished. And so the head nurse said to me, "Well, doctor, clearly you don't understand." And I said, "Well, not totally." She said, "Well, this is given to you to signify that your work here is not finished." And that still sits on my desk. It's still one of the most meaningful things I've ever obtained. I think for me, the culture in many of the developed areas, and particularly in my experience in East Africa and throughout Africa, is one of living for the moment, something that we need to learn more about, right? We practice now and preach mindfulness as a way of getting rid of all of the stuff in the past and the worry of the future. Well, this is a culture that lives every day in a certain sense of mindfulness, which is something that I think for all of us can also be very helpful for our lives. So after this month and the need to go back, our next phase, chapter 1, I'll call it, was setting up multi-specialty annual missions. We did this several times. And I have to highlight the work of my good friend, Moody Qureshi. Moody Qureshi is the glue that holds so many things together in terms of the volunteer efforts that I've done and many other people have done. He is the prototype philanthropist. He organizes, coordinates, arranges, promotes, facilitates, and orchestrates everything. And without him there, him on the ground, none of this and none of many other things would be possible. And so I think the essential pillar of volunteer work, no matter where you are, is to have this type of person on the ground. You need somebody on the ground who's going to take it and run with it if it's going to be successful anyway. And I give Moody all the credit in the world for most everything that's happened, certainly anything that I've been involved in. So this is it. We had multiple surgeons and many other people involved in these trips. Typically 2 weeks, multiple surgeries that were all preempted and organized by Moody, multiple teaching sessions, coming on with a lot of stuff, $1 million of equipment, being able to do very complicated surgeries. After doing that for a few years, we recognized that there were some mismatches. And I think those mismatches are things that are very important. One of them is we think we know the equipment and supplies that are needed, and well, they must not have this. And so we bring all of this fancy stuff, but a lot of times it sits in the closet and it's not used because there's not the capability of keeping it working. We don't have the biomedical personnel. And so we learned over the time that this sort of an approach sometimes doesn't lead to a sense of sustainability. And things are great for 2 weeks, lots of enthusiasm, lots of activity, lots of surgery, lots of learning. The lights are on, but then after you leave, sometimes the lights are off, and it doesn't carry through in the ways that we all would like to see. So for me, this was a process of learning that true sustainability has to be rooted in education. And looking at the educational status at that time, there was really a significant lack of educational opportunities, very little, if any, hands-on activities, limited professional organizations. The training was really almost non-existent. Most neurosurgeons that I associated with who were coming on board had done their training in general surgery and gone away for a year to Egypt or South Africa, and basically observed and came back and were doing neurosurgery. So the training was really difficult. And then the resources, of course, we recognized. And one of the things that hit me was that the nursing staff and most of the staff were not endowed, were not really part of the planning process. They were simply nursemaids. And so I think one of the early things that we learned is investing a lot of time and energy into the nursing staff because they drive us as providers, right? This is what drives us to be better. And I think this was one of the early successes is getting the staff invested into the actual care planning of patients. So this was the playing field. There were no training programs in this region. There were some obviously in the north and some in the south and some in the west. But the main area that we were working in had no neurosurgery training program. So that was the emphasis now. The emphasis turned in Chapter 2 towards education. Multiple missions were put together, a week or 2 or even 3, I believe, primarily focused in this region, hands-on sessions primarily. And part of that then led to the thinking, well, let's see if we can't develop a training program. So a meeting was held in Nairobi in September of 2004, again, orchestrated and organized by Moody. Neurosurgeons working in the region, a few hundred miles apart, who knew each other by name, perhaps, or reputation, but had never actually sat down and talked about things and never really met each other. All got together. Here you see Ben Wharf. Bert Parks was somebody who's from my state working in Kenya for many years working a few miles from where I was working, I never knew he was working. There was one of the things about coordination and connection that was drastically missing. So this group got together, and over the next few months, Moody and I wrote a curriculum for a training program based on a number of other U.S. and Canadian training programs in neurosurgery. We wrote it from start to finish, revised it multiple times. Moody began the process of incorporating multiple facilities. And why multiple facilities? Because one facility may not have the capability to do full training. One may not have the spinal or the peripheral nerve or whatever it be. So often it took the incorporation of multiple institutions together to be able to properly train a neurosurgeon. This was a 6-year program with 4 years of neurosurgery, 2 years of general surgery training. Moody personally, as our ambassador, took it to the College of Surgeons of East Central and Southern Africa, CASEXA, and it was approved in August of 2005. So it actually began operation in 2006. And at that point in 2006, there were a total of 31 surgeons in this region, 12 in Kenya, 19 in the remaining 9 countries. By 2012, the program had certified 24 neurosurgeons. By 2018, there were 10 in that year alone who were certified and graduated. And you can see the effects of this, here in one of the regions in Kenya, a publication about the first ever brain surgery performed. And you can see some of the graduating classes of CASEXA. So this has been a process of growth. In 2022, there were 31 trainees in a number of countries. And by that time, the program had certified 86 surgeons, 20 in Kenya, 8 in Tanzania, 8 in Uganda, and 50 scattered across a number of the other participating countries. Moody just provided me this update yesterday, and you can see the capability of updating this underlies the difficulty of coordination among the various parts of this. And it's sometimes difficult to know. Again, these are estimates as right now the total number of trainees throughout East Africa. We, for example, are really at this moment unaware of how many are added to the list from some of the countries. And you can see now, as we can estimate, the program has created 190 neurosurgeons. You can see the distribution throughout some of the countries. You can see the number of trainees that are currently in the programs in various areas. And again, the coordination of this is still somewhat difficult because there are various types of programs. There are university programs, there are programs that are sponsored by CASEXA. So a full knowledge of even the numbers that are being trained now sometimes is difficult and maybe impossible in some ways to obtain. I like to look back at our plan of action. So Moody and I drew this up when the training program started back in 2005, 2006, and we kind of laid out a 20-year plan of action. You can see that we are coming close to obtaining some of those goals. So fully trained neurosurgeons in all 8 provincial hospitals in Kenya. And then by 2025, fully trained neurosurgeons in all regional hospitals throughout East Africa. So we're making some indents into these where we're not being as probably successful as we had hoped is in any kind of recredentialing or recertification. So there's very little attempt to mandate or encourage in a strong way those who have been initially credentialed to continue their educational process. And you can see here the place where the training program, the time place where the training program came into play. And here in East Africa are the numbers of neurosurgeons, and you can see the exponential growth. Now, this is the number that's needed. So we're still not even close to the needed number, but you can see we are exponentially increasing the numbers. And hopefully, in another 5 or 6 years, we'll see, if we're lucky, this number be up perhaps in the range of 500 throughout East Africa. And you can see the same thing is occurring throughout Africa as a whole. So, there are wins, but there's still a long way to go. Moody, I know, has a dream and has been working on getting an African Board of Neurosurgery put together with the hope that this will encourage lifelong learning. Just as we have in the United States, the American Board of Neurosurgery, that is tracking all of us as we go through our careers, looking at our capabilities of continuing our education so that we can stay up to date and we can continue to be effective and state-of-the-art neurosurgeons. And this is CONSEXA, so it's doing a lot of the initial types of activities, but we still need to get recertification in there. And hopefully, if Moody can accomplish his goals as the ambassador and get an African Board of Neurosurgery online, we'll see some of that begin to happen. Well, the other part of this, the other chapter, the other big thing is the development of the hospital in Zanzibar, the neurosurgery hospital, that was created and guided to come into existence by one man, and that's this man, Jose Becerra. Jose Becerra came upon the scene in 2004, 2005, saw the need, developed his own foundation in Valencia with a goal of enhancing clinical skills, developing neurosurgery capability, and providing skills to our nurses and others that assist us in the operating room. And over this period of time, from 2006 to 2014, this is what Jose, with Moody's help, has accomplished. This number of cases, 34 hospitals in 7 countries. So, this is like, somebody who is basically on the road all of the time, traveling to multiple places with the goal of teaching, leaving equipment behind, and making a difference. And you notice this is not just work that's been done in East Africa. This work has also been on other continents. So an incredible effort by an incredible man. One of the places that Jose found in these travels was a hospital in Zanzibar, the Mnazi Moja Hospital, which prior to 2008 had no neurosurgical capability of any kind, despite a population of 1 million plus people. So with all of the traveling, it became clear that perhaps the next chapter was to establish a standalone neurosurgery hospital. And that was the direction it was taken. Here you see some of the initial plans. Spot was given. So the hospital complex is a large public hospital complex, and a site was selected right here on the Indian Ocean. Beautiful site. One of the important things, of course, is being able to work with health ministries and trying to establish a relationship that allows this to happen. And Jose was incredible in his efforts to accomplish that through NED. Here you see some of the initial interactions where there was a 60-40 split in terms of the cost to build, and building was started in November and progressed to its conclusion about a year later in November of 2014. Here you see the hospital in the Indian Ocean. There was an inauguration of the hospital, which was a big wheel and a big thing in terms of the area, obviously. Here you see some views of the hospital, 2 fully equipped operating rooms, intensive care units, wards for males, females, and pediatrics, and a wonderful conference room for teaching. This is what's been accomplished over the years. And again, I think in history, we're going to see this man, Jose Piquer, be designated as the Albert Schweitzer of this generation. COVID occurred, right? And we all hunkered down. Where was Jose Piquer? He was at the hospital working. He has dedicated 6-8 months at a time at the hospital. He's shown an investment and emotionality in making this work that is truly, truly extraordinary. And anybody that's watched this would share exactly those sentiments. Part of supporting a free-for-service hospital is finding the resources to make that happen. And you can see through Jose's foundation, the amount of money that's been raised to support not just the construction, but the ongoing maintenance of this facility. You can see the number of patients over these years that have been served, the number of patients operated, and the number of patients consulted upon. This has continued to grow with every year. Part of this process is incorporating numerous volunteers in basically every subspecialty into the process. And you can see here, we see the downturn in terms of volunteers during the COVID, but this has continued to grow throughout the lifespan. And as I mentioned earlier, this has hastened the development of multiple other specialties in this region. Everybody else has continued to develop under the umbrella of neurosurgery. And I call to mind Muli Abdal, who is a first neurosurgery resident from Zanzibar, who's progressing through her consecutive training and an inspiration to many as she progresses. Part of Jose's work was also to establish other adjunctive ways to support those patients. And he established the House of Hope in Zanzibar, which provides community support, provides transportation, supplies physical and other types of therapy for patients in their post-operative life endeavors. So another example of the commitment that Jose has had to this success. We mentioned education as one of the primary pillars, and the program, the NED program, has had a number of different world-class educational seminars. We just got back from the cervical spine course. And when I say world-class, here's a course where participants were asked to pay, I think, the equivalent of about $50 for the course, when it cost Jose about $100,000 to put on the course, based on all of the simulation models and other things that were here. So this is an attempt to educate in a world-class fashion, but in an almost free for service environment. Again, another example of what Jose has accomplished in this endeavor. A number of publications over these years, and now presenting, the NED experience as a model for development in global neurosurgery. This is an interesting article that I came across that's listing the number of publications in East Africa. And isn't it interesting that there's been an exponential growth in those publications since the birth of NED, and we shouldn't forget to mention articles in any number of books. So this is the experience of this Nazi Moja NED Institute. This is a very effective way of developing specialty care in a poor resource location. And this is the model of three pillars, where you're equipping, you're treating, and you're educating. And each of these pillars advances in complexity with increasing autonomy. So it's an attempt to begin from the ground level and to leave with a fully autonomous and functioning institution, starting with, for example, basic procedures, basic infrastructure, basic mentoring, and moving on to more specialization, more complex, again, leading up to full autonomy. So you can see this in its full elucidation. And I won't go through each of these, but you can see how we're advancing in the infrastructure in terms of the facilities. We're advancing in the types of pathologies that are being treated and in the types of education that's being offered. And I think this is an incredible model for development that incorporates a lot of things that have been learned over these 10 years of the hospital. And these are two pamphlets that Jose has created that I would draw your attention to. They're published through the University of Valencia chair. I have hard copies of these. You can get a soft copy by just getting on the NED Foundation website. These are incredibly insightful in terms of the development of global neurosurgery. And it's based on, again, an unbelievable experience in terms of developing this specialty in this region. The number of missions, the amount of money involved, the number of volunteers. And he's in these publications basically describing in detail the skills and non-clinical skills that we should be focused on in our educational endeavors. You know, it's looking at what these initiatives should look like. And there are many other publications that are included in this summary, but I would highly recommend everyone getting a hold of these either in digital or hard print, because they really are an incredible demonstration of where things have been and where we might expect them to be. I should also mention this was just opened a few days ago, a brand new surgical skills lab, again, state of the art in terms of its envision. And this is where we did the last cervical spine course, a testament to what can be done as part of this development process. So what's the next chapter? From my vantage point, the next chapter is connecting all of the resources. We know as medical practitioners that we live in an environment where there are multiple parts of our daily profession. So we as providers, you know, we're involved with healthcare facilities, we're involved with professional organizations, credentialing organizations and boards, our consumers or patients. And there are no resources that connect all of these various components. And if we just trim this down to global neurosurgery in East Africa. So here are the shareholders, right? We have training and certifying groups such as CONSECSA. We have the health ministries. We have volunteers and all of the organizations that support volunteers. We have the departments that are also running training programs. We have some professional organizations such as CANES, the World Federation, and others. We have global neurosurgery programs that are invested in this area. We have the trainees who are there. We have facilities that need things. We have industry that has excess and can supply it. And then we have the chain that meets the two. Yet none of these various components are connected in any way. And, you know, there's so much substance there that it's my belief if we could find a platform that would connect them, that might be the next great advance. And This has been recently introduced as a great hope to making this happen, a platform that would connect, for example, all of the organizations that are involved in volunteer efforts. And we can narrow it down beginning in just East Africa and then begin to spread it throughout the continent and perhaps throughout the world. If we could connect their content onto one platform, amazing, wouldn't it be amazing how much progress we would make? The same with the surplus, the industry and facility surplus. There are a number of organizations existing who are involved in this, who acquire equipment and distribute it in certain ways. One of the unknowns is the facilities and what they need. And it's been noted in publications that this is a really significant barrier to making successful donations, because often there's a mismatch between what's needed and what's received. Biomedical support, I mentioned, an important part. It's unknown. Sometimes equipment that's unsustainable is pushed into the back, and I'm sure there's stuff that we brought to Kenyatta that's in some closet now, 25 years later, with no mechanism of getting rid of it. Certainly not a good situation. So donors have very limited access to information about what's needed. And the solution is to match these two. We need to connect the suppliers, the ones that have and the ones that need. And we need to get information on the impact of this, because what might motivate someone that has an excess is knowledge that this is the good things I did. We talked about the ability to strategize in order to be compassionate. Well, institutions, certainly that's a big part of their willingness to cooperate. So maybe this is a mechanism of providing that connection. And finally, the supply-demand chain, the ability to transport, to store, to get through customs. Again, there are any number of organizations that are doing this, and if we could simply link their content on a platform, I think that would be amazing in terms of what it might accomplish. So I give you Vijay is with TechBond, who is the organization that is instituting this, and I would strongly suggest that anybody that has input or ideas on how we might make this occur, that's Vidya's email, and I'm sure she would love to hear from you. So in the end, this is where I've come through this process, and there are many thoughts, many emotions, many feelings that occur, and where it takes me emotionally. And I think I would call upon Charles Darwin. Those of us who learn to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. And doesn't that say something about us as a human race? Our collective ability to connect to each other and prevail is going to be hinged on these sorts of activities. The Dalai Lama, the doctrine is compassion, love for others, and respect for their rights and dignity, no matter who or what they are. Ultimately, these are all we need. I think that's very simply stated. No matter our religious background, our affiliation, I think we come together in a spirit of love and compassion and respect. And that takes us then to, well, one of our founding fathers in medicine, Sir William Osler, and equanimitas. It does not mean to be in a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work, because that's all around us. It means to be in the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. And isn't that something that all of us probably strive for? And I don't think there's anything better than the interactions that we all have in developing neurosurgery that lead us to that place. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you to all of you for being involved in this development process, for sharing the joy that I'm sure we all have in our hearts for the accomplishments and the inspiration to carry this process through. And thanks, Romani, once more for the invitation.
Welcome, sir. Thank you so much for the nice presentation. I think for this few minutes, I would like to invite the audience ask your question. But also, if you fail to post it in the chat, we can read it for you. There's one question in the chat. Good to have this initiative. I am Mozambique neurosurgeon working Baylor Central Hospital. I would like to ask about the opportunity to learn brain and spine microsurgery. This is to you, Professor. Opportunity to learn brain and spine microsurgery.
Yeah, well, I think we have done, Jose has done at the in Zanzibar at the Ned Hospital and now at the new Surgical Skills Lab. We have done each year hands-on course. Lumbar spine was 3 years ago, brain was last year, and cervical spine was this year. And I think that process of educational endeavors is certainly going to continue. For a more extensive fellowship, there are a number of fellowships that are available through some of the worldwide organizations such as FEANS and the World Federation that one can apply for. And if accepted, this will cover your expenses for a 6 or I think even a 12-month fellowship in either the United States or Europe. So there are mechanisms of getting a short-term hands-on workshop or a longer-term experience. And again, wouldn't it be nice if that information were available on a platform where anyone could access all of these available sources of information? There are so many parts of what we're all doing that are just disconnected. And again, I think trying to get some kind of connection here would be valuable and in so many ways.
All right, thank you. There's a question from Eskander Moody. I am a member of Mission Brain ORG, and we are currently initiating a collaboration neurosurgery educational network between University of Milan and the hospital in Tanzania. You have a huge network when it comes to neurosurgery training and education in Africa. Is there a way we can contact you, sir? We believe that your involvement would maximize our impact and help us both creating positive change in the African neurosurgical scene.
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to help in any way I can. I would add, I think the other person to incorporate into this is Moody Qureshi. I'm sure Moody would be more than happy to help. Again, a man on the ground, our ambassador, our true developer. So he would be more than happy to help in any way possible. So either myself and or Moody, we'd be happy to help.
Thank you.
Hey, Moody. Oh, yeah, I was going to hope you would say something.
Yes, thank you very much, Paul. I mean, when Lisa asked you in Zanzibar, what would you be if you were not a neurosurgeon? And you immediately said, I would be a teacher. I think everyone on this platform can see why you are such a brilliant teacher and why you articulate the needs of education so eloquently. Always a pride for me to say that I was with Paul Young when we started this journey. But to answer the question of the young person who asked about collaboration and microsurgery, currently in my role as the second vice president for the WFNS for Africa, I'd be happy to channel any requests. But you want to take this web down, www.neurosurgery.org. wfns.org. The foundation would be able to provide you opportunities where you can do fellowships in any area that you want. We're having a restructuring of the WFNS at the moment, so it might take some time for you to get a response, but but feel free. But one thing that has come out glaring, and you've not just touched, you've emphasized on it, is the role that a common platform will push our envelope and our endeavors towards success. And because the person who has introduced us to that platform, and you've kind of worked with Vidya, Paul, to enhance that platform, I think it's an appropriate time for you and I to introduce our colleague and friend, Vidya, to say a few words about how she thinks what she's just heard can enhance collaboration amongst those who are in need, and certainly would want to do that. Vidya, you go ahead while I take this telephone call.
Yeah, and
Thank you, Mudi.
I would just add before Vidya speaks that, you know, the Ned Hospital has been a free for service. Not a single out of those thousands of patients that have ever been treated has ever been charged a penny. And that's the same concept here with this new platform. This is not something that's going to be of any charge to anybody. This is a free service that's simply there to help connect. And I mean, this is an incredible opportunity. So go ahead, Vidya.
Yeah, just in brief, first, I want to thank you, Dr. Paul Young and Dr. Qureshi, for the extraordinary leadership and all the different levels of development and outreach and teaching and training that have happened over the last 25 plus years. We are just, I know, incredibly grateful to be able to learn from you. I also want to thank several people who are here today who have already been working towards and supporting the collaboration and connectivity that we've been working towards using the TechIt platform. Magalie and many others who are here today, thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your time and your expertise and your passion and commitment towards these next steps. You know, there is an incredible amount of substantive knowledge here that all of you have achieved together. I am not a medical doctor. I'm probably alone in that in this room. And it's just an extraordinary experience for all of us at TechBon to be able to play a role here, a philanthropic role in helping to bring this, together, this connectivity platform together with all of you. So we really need all of you. We need each of your expertise, your leadership, because everyone brings something very different to the table from a skills perspective, from an experience perspective, and this is going to take all of us to make this happen. So as Dr. Paul Young said, please do reach out to me if you have an interest. Several of you already have in the chat, and I will schedule time with you. But as a technology company, TechBon has been around for over 20 years. We focus on carbon-sensitive computing. We're deep in the AI space, and we're one of the very few technology entities that have a very specific way of using AI in a very carbon-sensitive way. And I'm sure for those of you who are, aware of the AI sort of boom right now, energy is an issue. It has a voracious appetite for energy and computing, and we have a very specific computing model that addresses those concerns. We come from a human rights perspective. I've done a tremendous amount of human rights work, and that's what brought me together with Mudi Qureshi and Dr. Paul Young and Dr. Jose Piquer. That's where we sort of meet, is in our mission and our values. And I really appreciate, Dr. Young, what you opened with, empathy versus compassion and human dignity, because that is going to be the driving forces behind this. And those are going to be the reasons why we get this done. So thank you so much for your leadership, and thank you for letting me say a few words.
Thank
All
you, Dave.
right. Thank you so much. I think we are out of time. I would like to introduce the next webinar series. We'll be having Dr. Magalie Cadieux, who will talk about introducing spine technology in LMICs, the experience in Tanzania. So again, thank you so much, all of you, for connecting today. I wish you all the best and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.